everyone. Welcome back to the Live with Sondra show. Today's episode is going to take you around the world, from Singapore to Dubai and China, as we talk about the magic behind designing parks that are futuristic and nostalgic. And I'm sure there's a couple of parks that might come to mind when you think about this. My guest today has built some of the most incredible destinations on Earth, and he's here to share how technology, storytelling, and safety all come together to deliver unforgettable fun. So grab your coffee or maybe your coaster, buddy, and let's roll the intro. All right, and hello everyone, and welcome back to Live with Sondra. I'm your host, Sondra Shannon, and today we're exploring a question I love. How do we build the future of theme parks without losing the nostalgia that makes them timeless? Because the best attractions in the world don't just entertain, they connect us to something bigger: memories, emotions, and magic. Before we dive in, I want to first take a moment to thank our sponsors, Gatemaster Technology, the trusted all-in-one ticketing and point-of-sale system, helping attractions around the globe grow smarter, faster, and safer for over 30 years. And speaking of growth, Gatemaster is hosting our GT Summit 2026 here in Colorado, March 11th through the 12th, where innovators, park operators, and industry leaders will come together to talk about what's next for technology, guest experiences, and profitability in our world of fun. You can find details at gatemasterinfo/GT Summit 26. And I'll tell you right now, I'm going to be in that room, and I want you to be in that room too. So let's talk about today's guest. Now, today's guest has shaped the attraction industry in ways most people only dream about. Markus Mack-Even, he told me I'm going to let him pronounce this in German. Markus Mack-Even is the founder of and CEO of Mack Management Entertainment, and his fingerprints are on some of the most iconic parks across the globe, from Universal Studios Singapore to IMG World of Adventure in Dubai. He's also been instrumental in developing and reimagining resorts like Chimelong Group in China, always combining innovation, safety, and pure fun. And what I love most about Markus is his belief that the heart of the industry is about delivering joy in a safe environment for everyone. I certainly agree with that. And when he's not building the next great attraction, you'll find him on the golf course with his two daughters, which tells you exactly where his values are. Markus, welcome to the Live with Sondra show. I'm so happy to have you here today.
Thank you very much. Good evening from Switzerland.
Yes, thank you for being here. I know it's late for you, and before we jump into design and strategy, I have to ask you, when you're at home with your daughters on the golf course, does that quiet time help you recharge creatively? Or do you find yourself dreaming up the next big parks in other ways? Like, is that part of your process? I know for me, being with my family is part of my process.
Well, I think it's a little bit of both. As senior members of my family, the Mack family from Germany, always say, we work 12 hours for our guests for leisure and entertainment, and the rest of the day is meant to entertain ourselves. So it's a mix of both. And if you talk about golf course, if the kids are just on the driving range and practicing, I'm sitting there with the laptop and continue working, considering time differences around the world, as you mentioned already. So it never stops. When we do what we do and when we love what we do, it always continues.
Yeah. Oh, I don't disagree. My kids sometimes say, they're like, "Mom, you figured out a life hack for work because you work when you want to." And I'm like, I literally work all the time. Like, what do you mean when I want to? It's just
It's like when people told me in the past, okay, you need a company phone. I said, no, I'm not having a company phone. If you want to reach me, you call me on my mobile phone because I'm not carrying two phones. And if
yes,
you don't want that, you don't give me a company phone because my company phone is my private phone and the other way around.
yes, yeah, agreed. I'm very similar. And if you don't have my phone, then you probably don't know me enough to have, you know what I mean? Well, you need to get to know each other for sure, right? That's what I always say. We need to get to know each other if you don't have that phone. Well, today I know our session is called Tech Meets Nostalgia and the Building Future Parks. And I love that phrase because that is exactly what the best modern attractions are, a blend of innovation and emotional storytelling. So I'd love to dive into that, but I have to ask a question because we're just meeting. And I love this question. What is it that got you into the industry? I always love the stories of how we began here. And those are always my favorite parts of the show. I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but
Well, I get that question a lot, and the funny part is I never had to choose the choice to choose. Being born into the Mack family in Germany with almost 250 years of
wow.
history. So I mean, your country turns 250 years next year. Our company or the origin where I come from turns 250 years in 5 years time. So just to get you in dimension, and so I literally had no choice. I grew up on the within the manufacturing of roller coasters. I spent my childhood, my teenager time within parks, within building attractions, and it continued through university until
Wow.
today.
I mean, 250 years of family that's been in this industry. We have a park here in Denver, I think turned 100 years old this year. And I thought that was, and it is greatness, right? To be a 100-year-old business for sure. Just when you think about that on its own, but 250 years. And that, when you mention that, that just has me thinking about what, all the institutional knowledge that has probably been passed down for generations over generations in order to do what you guys do and the work that you do. So thank you for sharing that. I know you've worked with both massive projects like Universal Studios Singapore and boutique parks like, is it Tiki Land? Tiki Land? Tiki Land.
Tichiland.
How
Tichiland.
does your creative and operational approach shift between the two? And I'm guessing the scale of the two.
Well, I think the whole setup of when you think about it is on one side you deliver the same thing, right? You deliver emotions, you deliver a great time to the families. Let's say the range of attractions in a smaller place is certainly let's say less complicated, but more hands-on. So if you have a team, when I think back in when we built IMG Worlds of Adventure in Dubai with Marvel and Cartoon Network, we had 1,000 people on the project management team, right? We had up to 2,500 people working on site from time to time. And then when you build a smaller boutique or place, as you called it, you installed a roller coaster yourself. I have pictures where I was literally directing the crane and putting tracks into the coaster in the small place, which just doesn't happen when you have hundreds of people working for you on site. I mean, I guess the advantage is I see details by doing what I do, what you do not do if you don't have the experience of building smaller places, because that's where you learn things. On the other side, working in corporate environment and working in family environments is also
Sure.
completely different. So the challenges are there on both sides. They are not the same, but the end product is for sure meant to be the
Yeah.
same.
Yeah, no, I agree. We work with large and small, and I do see the differences for sure between the larger organizations and then the smaller, more family run operated. There's a little bit more heart in what's happening there. But you see with the
I
big, what's
disagree.
that?
If I may, I disagree with the smaller organizations, more family run, because you mentioned earlier, for example, Time Long, or what my cousins and my uncles are running with Europa Park. I think they are with the biggest organizations you can find in our industry. So I think family industry in general is different, and the process of getting to decisions is
Yes.
also different. But both is
Yeah, but
fun.
then you also see parks like here in the States, you do have the Hershon group who does have heart in what they do, and they are more corporate, even though it's family run. So it has been really neat in the 25 years that I've been here to watch some of these families grow into these larger organizations that can do more, have a bigger impact. And I'm sure that's kind of where you have found yourself now that your family company is over 250 years old. I can't get over that. That just and I'm sure over that time business has changed tremendously, right? Innovation has changed so much of what we do. Even in my small 25 years have been in this industry, innovation has completely changed a lot of what we do in the scope of what I do for sure. So, you've had hands-on experience across continents, and I'm curious if you can share a moment when technology directly elevated guest experience in a meaningful way.
Well, um, before I go across continents, let me give you one small piece of history which we often discuss in the family. Um, End of the 90s, when, let's say, computers got strong enough that we started with AutoCAD. We had my uncle, who was at the time already in his late 70s. He's like, hey, all these young guys, they are only watching TV nowadays. I don't see what they are drawing. The old guys he could control in the evening. Okay, how much have they produced? What could he take down and start fabrication with? While he didn't understand what they are looking at in the screen. And I think that was a major step 25, 28 years ago. And we have similar things happening today. And I think the pandemic has been a fusion to that, that we look into more technology of how to manage our guests in the park. And it has for sure been a challenge, and it is still a challenge for smaller places maybe to catch up with technology, which is not so affordable. But it helps us understanding what the guest wants, if we have the tools. And I think AI will help us looking through the data which we collect on an operational level, also on a gating level. It will help us maintaining the safety of the attractions, because we get more transparent of what the team does when maintaining a ride. It will not replace, in my opinion, at least for the next decades, the experience of a technician who understands the ride, because AI will not be able to listen if a gearbox is not working properly, but an experienced technician understands that just standing next to the ride. And when the other day I got asked, okay, can someone write a safety report looking at the pictures, or can you have AI helping you writing this report? I said no, because AI will never see what I see on a picture, and or on a video, and understand the behavior of an operator or a technician or a guest. And the human factor is not, we are not able to calculate the human
Yes.
factor, right? But we are able to see the human factor and understand it. So I think it's a supporting technology which takes over a fair bit in the future and helps us delivering things, um, operational and technical. And I'm not talking guest experience or show elements at the moment. This is purely on
Sure.
operational levels.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I agree. I feel like there are a lot of things that are still going to require the human touch for quite a while, because there's just the AI, from what I've seen as well. It can certainly, like you said, read reports faster, analyze data, and in that way it's great. But you're right, it's not going to replace somebody standing next to a ride and hearing if there is a need that needs to be addressed. And I know you've talk in to us about balance between innovation and nostalgia. And I really appreciate you sharing this stuff operationally, where I agree. I actually was on a podcast recently with regards to whether or not I believe that AI would be replacing jobs. And I do think that those skilled, what do they call it, um, the mechanics, that stuff's not going away anytime soon. But when we look at innovation and nostalgia, and take in consideration technology, AI, VR, how do you decide what classic elements to preserve while layering this new technology?
Well, I guess we are going into more show
Okay.
experience, right? Um, and I always think when we open the gate, we wanna have the guests coming back, right? Long parks like the one you mentioned, over 100 years, and others which are well established, not new projects. They are living a lot from returning visitors, even more so if they are regional. So there are the emotions also of childhood, through parents, through grandparents. And I think it's important that we keep that nostalgic element, because the grandparents will help us with the secondary spend in the
Yes.
park. We might be able to cover operational costs with the gate, but where we actually make the revenue in future to develop the park and to make the park better for the future is probably with the secondary spend, or a fair bit of it. And I think that's so important that the grandparents want to come back and say, hey, we want to show you what we experienced with your parents, and they put the kids on the carousel. They will not put a VR glass or even the Nintendo helmet for Universal on and go there with their kids, but they will go there and have fun on the carousel, even if they are only watching from the outside. So I think the mixture of covering everything is so important, and the big attractions will maintain the marketing element for the growth, or maintain the attendance we have, while the non, let's say, modern technology element will always be the core of our business, because we sell emotions. It's like if you go to a circus, as where my family came from, supplying equipment to the circuses over 100 years ago. They still work with the animals. Well, we have different elements, rightly or wrongly. I'm not going into
Sure.
that debate, but the kids love the horses, right?
Right. No, I think that's a very interesting perspective, and one that I can relate to. My grandfather, who passed away when I was young, would take me to Disneyland, and he would always take me to the tiki room first. And that is not the most high tech part of. Yeah, have you experienced Tiki Land at Disneyland in California? I think it was Walt's
I
first
have been
attraction
there.
in Disneyland. but it's not a ride, it's a show. And there's animatronics. But my point in bringing that up is just that today, that is the first place I take my kids every time, because my grandfather did it with me. And I think that you, being somebody who has had generations in this industry, can see that firsthand, that what we are selling is that nostalgia, a lot of times, the emotions, the feelings that people get. I go there sometimes to remember my grandpa, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So that's really cool. That's a really cool a point that you brought up here. I appreciate you sharing that. Well, I am curious, just kind of moving along with regards to the business of fun that we're in. What are some of the strategic differences that you see in expanding existing parks versus starting new ones from the ground up with a brand new one? When you're starting fresh, what are maybe some of the strategic differences? I have some in mind, having worked with also before the internet. Infrastructure didn't exist in a lot of the parks that we would go to.
I mean, the infrastructure we can put in nowadays just on IT network is just so
Yes,
different, right? And refitting major parks at a certain scale costs so much money, but even so, they are doing it because they see the benefit of the
sure.
technology. So the networks we are using today and we build in gives us so much control over things and so much visibility as well. Depending on where you operate in the world with data collection and not data collection, we certainly a lost child. If I have a lost child in the UAE with all the data, the camera coverage I must have because of the local law and police requirements, is so much easier with face recognition than without it. And yes, data. I understand data collection in Europe and the US and in many places it's handled differently, but it certainly
Yeah.
helps.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. There's actually a great book that I read when my children were little, because I was one of those moms. I would write their names across their chest in a Sharpie and then put their shirt back on. So if you get lost, find a mom and show them this so they can call me, when they were real little, and they couldn't really advocate for themselves. And I read this great book. It's interesting. It's called Selfish Reasons to Have More Kids. It's not even about having kids. It's actually about how much safer the world is because of this technology that we have, and we're seeing a lot of it in our parks today. I mean, even
Is it?
I mean, it's getting better, right?
Well, it's more surveillance on
Yes,
mom's side. I mean, we grew up without it. We grew up more independent, and I'm curious how our kids turn up when they have our age and how much they rely on technology and don't fix the problems we can fix with our
yes. Oh,
hands.
I don't disagree with you on that. I Yeah, that's a whole show right there. We would have to.
Yeah, for sure,
We would have.
for sure.
But
But I think,
no, please
go
go ahead.
ahead. So I think to close the earlier point out, expanding of an existing park or major park compared to building a new one, I think if we put something new into a major park, we have certainly data nowadays of what the
Sure.
guests want to see, right? And what the guests would expect as a new attraction. Or we understand based on even, let's say, additional opening hours, especially in Europe and winter time, with probably Christmas season, which came in 25 years ago and wasn't before, how much indoor attraction space was created so the people get warm in December when they come to the parks, which wasn't there before. So I think we make decisions based on knowledge much more when we extend a park. While it's maybe difficult from a project perspective to extend it, because we close access to other places
Sure.
in the park. When you build a new park, you lay it out on a piece of paper, but you make a certain amount of assumption of what the society where you are building is expecting. And I think that's what something we are seeing at the moment in the Middle East and Saudi very much, with all these Japanese cartoonish directions for Saudi, which is certainly coming also because the crown prince likes that topic very much on one side. On the other side, the people think, okay, our society is looking at it, but I don't see how that might be developing in 20 years, because we have no visibility of how this brand will
Sure.
develop. And when we built IMG in Dubai, I think we had certain Cartoon Network brands, and they moved on so quickly. While we had 20 years visibility with Marvel at the time, we had only 7 years with Cartoon Network. So would I choose the brand we chose at the time to build the park nowadays? Probably not. But it was a very good brand based on the data we had from Cartoon Network. So I think putting in a new attraction in an existing park is easier for the performance of the park, while building a complete new project where you have a fair bit of guesstimate against your
Yeah,
investment.
and also I'm sure like from the business side, when you're starting a new park, you're also starting a new park. So you mentioned earlier, you don't have that nostalgia already built in, and you don't have families who've been coming for generations. So then you have the additional work of getting known. And to your point, it might be easier to do with an older, more established IP than something that might be newer and we don't have a lot of data on. It's very interesting. This is such a different part of the industry than I'm in, so I'm learning a lot from you today. And I appreciate it. As I always say on this show, like I feel like the luckiest person because I get to learn from people like you who've been doing this a long time and in parts of the business that I don't get to touch very often. And that kind of brings me to like leadership, right? We know that a lot of times these projects don't go as planned, right? I've heard stories of just Epic Universe, how they
Uh,
had to delay things at times. We know they don't go as planned. So, from the perspective of somebody who's been in this industry their entire life, so I'm sure you are inoculated a little bit to those types of stressors. But, what's maybe the most valuable business lesson that you've learned from times where you didn't have things go as you had planned? Or maybe you've never ran into that.
oh, no, 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 no. I think I ran into it every day. If it's not in business, it's at home with the
Fair.
family,
Yeah.
right? Well, I think a lot comes down with the team you have around you. And wherever I was and whatever I built, at least the core team around me was handpicked, right? So the team around me when we started Dubai, for example, the head of HR at the time and the CFO, we laid out the strategic decisions of who is joining our team on capabilities. And then there are certain teams as head of project, which I made the decision myself as like, it's either this guy or not nobody else. And these are guys then who will go with you through the dust and through the dirt. I honestly believe if I call 5 to 10 guys and say we have a new project somewhere around the world, and they are not 100% committed somewhere, they will join tomorrow morning. So, and I think this is the most important thing, that the trust to the people you work with um, has to be built up, and once it's there, it's difficult to get you apart. And I think that was always we were in the shit
No,
together.
that's
Sorry for
okay.
the word, but um, but we always pulled through. And one thing, we were always there together, right? It's like if it was 3 o'clock in the morning, we were together on the construction site, and we had breakfast together the next morning. So it doesn't
Yeah, I
matter.
love that. I love that. And I have a similar, our company's 30, almost 30, I think 2 years old now. And I've been with it for 25 years, but we do have a great team around us that I know even during the pandemic, we were going to have each other's back. And I think it's really cool that you brought that up, that you have people on your team that you know well and you trust, and they see the vision of where you're going, and not only where you've been, which is really great because we don't have that legacy that you have, but I'm sure, you as a leader, you've got to be good at showing people where you're going or where these parks are going and the vision of what's coming. And that's part of the storytelling, right? Even for the guests. So I know is it Chimelong? Chimelong, am I saying that correctly?
Yes.
I know at that you did a Halloween event with about 50,000 guests. Is that right? Is
Well, they have between 50 and 60,000 for a Halloween event through October. It's not me, right? I'm too far away
Sure.
to actually hands-on manage that. When I'm there, I'm certainly involved, and I'm happy to be involved. But the team they have there, under Mr. Su, the owner of the Chimelong Group, who founded it 35 years ago, um, is as experienced managing people, right? And it's coming back down. It's like, well, it's a tabletop exercise of where do you put people to ensure that the logistics works, right? It's all coming down to logistics. This time it's humans, another time it's something else. But you don't want to have 50,000 people working crisscross. So suddenly the whole park is a one-way street, one way up, one way down, and you create new pathways, new exit ways, and you make sure that you have strategically positioned spots where you can right away act if something goes wrong. And it's like filling a stadium just on a bigger plot, and it's amazing because in between you have over 1,000 live actors in the place. You have an arena with 8,000 people where fireworks and concerts is happening, and all that with roller coaster queue lines in
Yeah, and that
between.
and that kind of is what I was curious about. How do we keep safety and the experience and the operations all in harmony at that scale? As you said, it's a stadium sized group. It's a lot. Yeah.
It is. It is, and I think what there are decisions in place up front. Let's say I said it's a one-way street. As soon as they hit, I think 30 or 35,000, the main walkway in the park, which is theoretically still a circle, like in any most of the major theme parks, you can go around the park in a circle, and now they close one way, which is getting too narrow, so you cannot go back that way, and security teams are ensuring that. So it's a one-way street, and the other way is bringing you back where you want to go.
Yeah. That's that's very interesting that you've got to rethink how traffic is moving when you start moving. I mean, and I assume that was the case, especially having gone to Disneyland as a young person, and you mentioned my mom would just let us go.
Hmm?
Yeah, at the end of the day, when it gets dark, come meet me here. And we just get off running the park. But today is so many people that, the paths we used to take, and I remember them well as a kid, are not necessarily the paths you can take today because of the way the traffic is being directed. So that makes a lot of sense, especially as we see more and more people visiting our attractions. And I know that you're very passionate about creating fun, safe environments. And how do you communicate, and this is just out of curiosity, that dual commitment to your team so that it is being lived every day?
Well, I think one big element is, and I think that's the biggest challenge I personally face working around the world, is the cultural differences,
Sure.
right? Um, people in the Western Hemisphere are willing to take much more responsibility, even if they are on a lower paid job than people maybe in an Eastern Hemisphere. But that's culturally driven, and a lot of it comes back to the coaching and the training as well. When I think of let's say a training or an educational session, not necessarily training in Asia, a lot of it. Okay, can we have the right paper and we teach them like a tabletop lecturing session, which doesn't necessarily work. I think when we promote safety and talking to the guests and educating guests, a lot of it comes also almost from a coaching, even more mentoring session where you take the people by the hand and say, hey, this is something you can say, and this is not something you can say. Yes, you can print that in the back of a booklet. Okay, if someone asks you this question, this is what you answer. But ultimately, it comes down to personality, and personality you only form if you interact with your staff and bring them to the level I believe they should be. And again, it's becoming a hands-on leadership and leading more by example than on anything else.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I know with everything changing in our industry from tech to marketing and guest expectations, and you've kind of touched a little bit on all of those. What's one thing that you found in the industry that stays consistent no matter the decade?
There are two things. One is something we have to manage, and the other thing is something we want to achieve. The first thing is we want to achieve that the kids go home with a smile with the parents as well. Maybe they are even sleeping in the stroller and still have a smile in their face. And I think that's the ultimate goal, and doesn't it's not something you can pay with money. The other thing is certainly that we need to understand once a guest enters our theme park, or a family even more so, as you rightly said, your mother just said, let you off, right? It's a safe place, nothing will happen. So it's almost like our guests enter the park and they leave their brains in the car, right? So we need to create that safe environment which justifies that they are completely safe, and things will happen, but we can limit to what will happen, right? And that's a lot comes out with the safety of what we are building, and with the educational element of our staff and the people we hire.
Yeah. And I love what you said, leave the brains in the car, because you know what? Most people are visiting our attractions to escape, and be together as a family, leave all the day-to-day stuff behind for even just an afternoon in some cases. So I really love that. Uh that that I'm gonna say that to people from here on out. Like, if your guests can't leave the brain in the car, we got some improvement to do, right? Well, Marcus, I'm curious, and this is kind of this is more for our audience, because you have been such an inspiring guest, and I know this is more of a global conversation, and you're up late for me, and I really appreciate you being here. And you've reminded us that while technology keeps pushing boundaries of what's possible in the attractions industry, it is still a human experience. And that is something I think that a lot of people need need to hear, and also we need to be reminded of. So I really appreciate uh, what you're saying there, and that those are the things that make a park truly unforgettable, is when our guests can just be in the experience. And I think that that's a something we should all achieve to do. So if there is somebody out there watching this show today, and they would like to get in touch with you, or the business, what is the best way they can do that?
Well, I guess it's a lot of is going via LinkedIn nowadays, for
Yeah.
me as well. That's certainly a thing. Otherwise, use the Mac Management info at um, email address, and someone will reply to it sooner or later. If I'm on the road, which is happening a fair bit, reply might not come on within 24 or 48 hours, but it normally comes.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that. We'll make sure to put that in the comments and show notes so people know how to get a hold of you. And any last words before I let you go, because this has been a really fun show for me, especially with your history in the industry. And yeah, I didn't even realize it was 200, what you said, 46 years or 45 years.
45 this year, yeah.
Wow.
But this year is almost over.
Wow.
So
That's a,
for me, I guess it's just like um, the key is have to have being able to deliver fun, and that's when you have a strong team which is educated. Because if they deliver the fun and if they have fun in what they are doing, the guests will have fun, and we will then create the safe environment altogether by do what we do best.
well, I appreciate you sharing those final thoughts, and I appreciate you being here so late. Thank you
Oh,
for coming on
welcome.
the show. Well, thank you. I'll see you at IAPA.
I guess so.
Yeah, I'll see you at IAPA. Well, I hope you enjoyed that show. I love when we have guests that bring the conversation to a more global conversation, which is really nice and a nice change for the show today. And yeah, I just really want to thank Marcus for allowing us to have him on the show. And I know that he had to be up late to do that. So a big thank you to our guest today. And also a big thank you to our sponsor, Gatemaster Technology, for making this show possible and for bringing together the GT Summit 2026. So if you're in the attraction industry and you're ready to take your operations or your tech or your guest experience to the next level, visit gatemaster.info/GT Summit and come be part of shaping the future of the fun business. Thank you again for all tuning in today to the Live with Sondra show. I appreciate all of our listeners, whether you're watching us live or you are listening on one of the podcast networks. We certainly appreciate you and your comments, feedback. I know a lot of you leave comments in the chat, and I really love going back and reading all of those and your own personal insights and what you have to share with all of us who are doing this show. And what you have to say about our guests too is always so refreshing because we've had some amazing guests on here. I want to thank again my team as always for helping me put together this Live with Sondra show. It takes about 5 people to make sure that we can show up here and do this for you today. So if you happen to see one of them, thank them for me and let them know that you heard that on the show. And until next time, I hope you keep building, you keep innovating, you keep making memories that last a lifetime. Let your guests leave their brains in their cars. I love that because they should be able just to have the experience with that without the worry. And I know we are creating experiences and we have a truly amazing and hospitable industry that continues to do this for generations. So I will see you all soon on the next Live with Sondra show. Have a good rest of your day and take care.